Let me kickstart our session for today. So we have our own graduates from here, from Texas A&M. So Anna works at Salesforce, Rishu works at Asana, and Ann works for Netflix. So they're all coming back after having graduated in 2024. So they're a year removed from, well, not a year, just just a few months removed. I was just a year ahead myself, but yeah, just a few months removed from Texas A&M. They have done a bunch of internships while they were here at A&M. And I taught this class last fall, and I invited them to host an intern panel, and it went really well. And so we're just so lucky to have them back, and thankful to them for taking the time away from their regular workday to come and talk to us. I sent out a preview of what we are up for in terms of content. They'll go over basic stuff, about resume, about getting your application noticed and building up contacts, all the good stuff. And their presentation has a lot of resources as well. So without further ado, I'll invite them to talk to us. And again, thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tagi. Are you on hearing me okay?
We
Okay.
are. Yes. Thank you, Ann.
Yes. Um, so I guess we can start by introduction. Anna, do you want to go first?
Yeah, of course. So, hey everybody, I'm Anna, class of 24, like Dr. Tiagi said. I graduated this May. My major was computer science, like all or most of you. And I had two internships during my time at A&M. I was a systems analyst intern at Ingram Micro. It was probably like the least technical role that you can get while still being technical. And then my next internship was a software engineering internship at Salesforce. And I ended up getting the return offer. So I'm going to be starting there in September. Super exciting. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rishu Prasad, or Rishu. I'm also class of 2024, graduated a few months ago with everyone else here. Yeah, majored in computer science, and yeah, I did a few internships as well, kind of a lot of different areas of computer science. But last thing I ended up doing was being a product engineer, which is basically a software engineer at Asana. So that's where I'll be returning in about a week or 2 weeks. So that'll be exciting. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's exciting. Are you going to move to SF anytime soon?
Yeah, I'll be in SF. So I think Anna's also going to be in SF.
We'll
So
both be in the
Okay.
Bay. I'm excited.
So we
yes,
all should meet up.
yes.
So hi
Yes.
everyone. My name is Ann. I also graduated in May 2024, major computer science, the same as everyone in this con. I did my career journey is a bunch of different internship and different role. I try to try different stuff. And yeah, I love watching horror movies, and that's why I'm working on Netflix. So if you're interested, let me know. Um, then we can talk about recruitment year timeline. So I guess I can start with this slide. So usually, like for recruitment year timeline, you usually recruit 1 year ahead of your internship start date. So over here we kept put the calendar and also the respective timeline so you can prepare. For example, from January to April, at that time you should prepare for your resume. You should reach out to your alumni to build up that connection. And then from May to September, usually these are the internship summer period. A lot of time in here you're gonna do summer activities. So you might work on research assistant or maybe working on an internship. And this is also the time that a lot of the career fair and networking events can be happen. So either you have conference, which we will mention later in the later slide. And then eventually the recruitment process start hitting up again during August to the end of the year. Usually a lot of places gonna open up the posting during July, and then which basically mean that you should start apply right away during that time. And then agenda, we're gonna talk about building a resume. We're also gonna talk about how do you prepare for your application. And then lastly, would just be how can I find all of these internship positions which I can apply to. And then building a resume.
Okay, so we're just going to talk about some general advice because there's a lot of resources out there. And then in the next slide, Rishu will go into some more CS specific things. But yeah, there's a ton of resume workshops available through A&M, so definitely take advantage of those. I know the department puts some on, as well as SEC and some CS specific orgs like AWIX and that's the only one that can come to mind, but I'm sure that you guys know. The career fair also has drop-ins where you can consult the help of an advisor. That'd be for more like general resume building stuff, but you know, still useful. And those bottom 3 links that we have are just, you know, some helpful links. Jake's resume is a very popular like CS resume template. And then some do's and don'ts and common pitfalls, but we'll gloss over those.
All right, so now I'm gonna get into some like specific details of the resume that you can kind of follow, and I'll go basically through the section. So this is like an example resume that I think I had a little bit ago. So you can kind of see the boxes that I formed around the sections, but obviously the most important is your education. That's what you're in school for. So make sure you highlight that at the top of your resume. Obviously, I think most people here probably around like sophomores. So I think having high school achievements is, I think it's valid. But obviously the goal in college is basically to remove those as you're going. Remove like your high school achievements, your high school GPA, and you want to try to focus on doing more things in college. So emphasizing other things like your major, minors, graduation date, obviously, and scholarships awards are also very important. Probably the graduation date is one of the most important because that'll basically validate you for eligibility for different types of internships, whether it's like a freshman program or a sophomore program or like an upperclassman program. The next part, which is kind of the goal of an internship, is the work experience. So this is where you can put anything that basically contributes to your career. So a lot of times people think that this has to be an internship, but obviously, like as a freshman, sophomore, it might be harder to have internship experience. So you can put anything here. One of my friends who's a sophomore actually, I worked on a research project with him, and so here he basically includes his research assistant position, quote unquote position. And yeah, so these don't have to be paid. They can just be volunteering. They can be an officer role. They can be research, a project, anything. But the most important thing is how you explain it. So the 3 key things are to be concise, be direct, and show impact. So basically Google has this thing called the XYZ formula, but essentially the point is that you have to show what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what the impact of that was. So using numbers, using quantities like statistics, like how many people did you affect, how many pieces of data did you import, things like that, how much faster did you make the program. These are things that you can use to prove that you actually made an impact, basically. The next thing is projects, which again is kind of a continuation of work experience. Basically, just showcasing your passion and your interests. Things that you can do on the side, things that you're passionate about. Again, another one of my friends, I think he's very interested in cricket. So he basically has this cricket program that he uses to look at statistics and basically figure out like optimal stuff. I don't know about cricket, so I don't know much about that. But he basically has that as his project. So it's really cool. It's something to talk about in an interview. One thing I would say is like early on, you'll probably have some cookie cutter type projects that you do in your classes, like I think like Sudoku and tic-tac-toe. These are some common things that people do early on. The goal is to like phase those out and have things of substance. So things that have actual meaning, things that you're dedicated to over the long term. That's kind of the most important. And yeah, basically personal projects are better than class projects because class projects are usually more common. The next section is technical skills. So this is kind of where you can just kind of inject a bunch of stuff that they put in the applications. Oh, whoops, camera. Basically, like if you see in applications, they always have these keyword sections. So that's, or they have keywords like throughout the requirements and stuff like that. So this is kind of where you can just inject all those words. So if you see in this example, I have like Python and scikit-learn and Flutter and Flask, software engineering, all these keywords that they pick up in applications, which we'll talk about later. And yeah, one of the key things I guess early on you kind of want to think about is like, do you want to go for breadth or depth? Like, do you want to go for as many different opportunities as possible, or do you want to focus in on one thing? It's kind of up to you. Like for me, I went for breadth because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but some people know exactly what they want to do, so they just go exactly for something specific. And then the final main section is probably coursework, which I just kind of included my technical skills. This is where you want to exemplify what you know, and the main courses like data structures, anything object-oriented related, web development, anything infrastructure, like any of Tiagi's classes, for example. Those are great ones to put in your resume. Make sure you put those. And then this is also where you can put additional things like ML or cybersecurity or operating systems. Anything like that is good to put here. Okay, next slide. Okay, so then this is where you can kind of spice it up, I like to say. Basically just add additional things that maybe could make your application just a little bit better if possible. So some of those things are like activities, for example. I feel like in CS, we always think about like internships and classes and GPA and all that kind of stuff. But activities are also good because it kind of shows how you are as a person. It demonstrates leadership, teamwork. And these are kind of the things that at the end of the day are most important to some companies. Like, how are you going to be as a team player within the team? So this is a great thing to include, like if you're in any clubs or any organizations. Another thing is possibly skill levels. I don't personally have skill levels, but this is something that some people include, especially for more targeted audiences. Like if you're going for depth, like if you're really interested in quantitative trading, for example, maybe putting that you're an expert in like C++ would be useful because that's a very useful skill for quant firms. The other side though is that it may disqualify you for something. So it's kind of push and pull. I think most people don't put it, but something to think about. Another thing is contact and additional information. So I always try to include that at the top. Surprisingly enough, some people forget to put their phone number or email, which it's tough if you have a great application, but then they have no way to find you. So make sure you make these very standardized, and these links alone should also be set up, which we'll talk about later, I think. But yeah, another thing is objective. This is also kind of an optional one. And it comes in various forms. Some people like to emphasize like what you're doing, like what you want to do, or why you're interested in the role. For me, I have a very small one at the top, basically just indicating that I'm looking for full-time roles. Just like announcing what you want, but it doesn't have to be too long. And then the final thing overall is just like the design. We talked about the Jake's template, which I think is what I use, or it might be some other LaTeX template, but there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can use LaTeX, you can use Word, Google Docs, up to you, whatever you find easiest. I have this very fancy term for some reason, positive negative space trade-off. It's not really that complicated. The point is that you only want to put what's important so that the things that are most important are highlighted. Basically, you don't want to just fill it up with a bunch of random stuff. You want to be targeted essentially. And yeah, there's also this thing called ATS. I forget what it exactly stands for, but automated something. But basically, it's a way that companies automatically look through resumes. And so that's kind of what I was talking about with the keywords. Like if you include these keywords that are in the application, then it'll like basically automatically trigger on your resume. So yeah, and keeping it simple. But yeah, we can go to the next slide.
So I can talk about the CS specific tips. So I think that for me, one thing that worked out for me is that you should think about how should you present yourself in front of the interviewers or the companies. So like for me, I actually did a lot of different stuff, and the reason for it is that I want to try different opportunities and different role. So my resume most of the time is an internship working on different domains such as like backend to infra to security and so on. However, like if you want to I guess like aim for machine learning role or like AI role, right? Then you may want to tailor your resume to fit more in that direction. Maybe you should do more generative AI personal project, or you do some internship that actually working directly with an AI model, training, tuning, and so on. And then the second thing is that you shouldn't include something just to fill in the blank. A lot of time it can be a distraction, and interviewer can sometimes wondering, oh, I'm not sure what does this kind of specifically looking for. And another tip would just be thinking about the imaginary role, which I also touched briefly earlier, about like, which role do you want to aim for. So in actually in engineering, we have a lot of role related to tech. So like we have research engineer, which most of the time you're working on building infrastructure or like platform for research purpose. Research scientist is the one that actually conducting those research. And then you have software engineer. In some other companies, you even have like security software engineer who like working on security, but not involving in how we design that security system. Or like distributed system software engineer where you want to work on like massive scale of system of like microservice and so on. You can also think about the type of expertise. So if you want to pursue like front end, back end, full stack, or like research, infra, security, data science. Recently, with the generative AI, we also have a new field called ML Ops, which basically all of the engineering function that support machine learning workflow and training and so on. And then the third thing would be about like the type of company that you want to apply to. So you can apply to mostly tech-based company, like Fang, Roblox, Asana, Salesforce, or you want to apply to non-tech company, which like insurance, like State Farm, health, government, finance, like Quant Trading, or you want to apply to startup. It can range from like biomedical tech startup to also poly tech startup, or like big companies, which a lot of time is the same as tech. So for me, because I also did a few internship in startup, one of the things that I guess I noticed was that for startup, they're usually looking for generalist stack. So if you want to apply to I guess a high growth startup recently, maybe like Stripe or other companies like Databricks, a lot of time this company maybe prefer you to have a generalist background where you can like do a lot of stuff from end to end and not like specific in any specific role. And then lastly, we just like don't forget to ask the university recruiters for feedback. Their job right there is like to interview, to gather the lead, and also convince you to sign the offer. So they literally your allies. Then the next thing would be the application process preparation.
So something that isn't really talked about like at school is the whole concept of building your personal brand. When you apply to internships, there's 2 links that are often requested, not required, that are really good to include if you have them, and really good to include if they look nice. So those 2 are LinkedIn and your GitHub. They just really show like your, I don't know, projects and achievements and involvements. And it's a way for you, like as an applicant, to make yourself seem more well-rounded. Like because of those two, how am I gonna say this? Because of those resources, you are like a real person rather than just like a resume, or rather than just like your list of accomplishments. They're just a way to show off like what you've been up to and show your personality. And I don't know, creating your network is very important to like keep furthering yourself. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about some specific LinkedIn tips. The content should be professional. It should not be like a Facebook. I know some people are using it more for that these days, but it really should be tailored towards like what you're learning in school, the projects that you've accomplished, the teams that you've worked on. And if you attend conferences, the conferences that you attend, those are super important to put on there. But yeah, like, and also just sharing like what you've built and learned, super, super important. And like good content to have on like your LinkedIn. We'll talk a little more about how to use LinkedIn as a tool, but I think to start off, like just setting up your LinkedIn in a way that's like digestible for people is a great place to start.
Also, one thing I'm gonna add is that On has one of the best LinkedIns that I've ever seen of anyone. So if you guys want to like get a lot of info about a lot of companies, go to On's LinkedIn. Go to him.
Thank you so much for the shout out. I also want to say, sorry, how do I go back to the previous slide? Can someone tell me? Oh, never mind. I forgot the arrow. One thing I also added yesterday was that you are what you ship. So I went to this event of Vercel CEO. If you ever heard of Vercel, it's kind of like deployment platform for your website. And basically he was talking about like, his career and a lot of the stuff that he able to get, like from like investor money to like working with like people to launch like Nest.js or like all of the open source that probably run the whole internet right now, like Sockets.io and so on. All of that coming from a single blog post that he posted on his personal website. So, like sharing knowledge, right, about what you build and learn. A lot of times you be kind of like really surprised like people when I reach out say, oh, I'm also within the same thing and I would love to have you on board and so on. And then for this one, do you want to do it, Rishi?
Or actually I can take this one. So the elevator pitch, I feel like everybody's heard of it, but nobody really knows like what it is. So on this screen, I just included some resources that can help you create one. But just having an elevator pitch is so important, whether you're like cold introducing yourself to someone and you have to have something to say, or you're in an interview and you get asked like the tell us about yourself question. You need to have something like in mind that you want to say that like concisely depicts like who you are, as well as like what you want out of like whoever you're talking to. So yeah, super important to have, and you should be updating it like as you continue to like learn and grow and accomplish things. But this is like the base template that I use to craft mine. So you guys can go and do that after this.
Okay, cool. So I guess from there now, because this is part of how you can, I guess, prepare for your application, prepare for your building your brand. One of those big things is networking. So this is one of those things that kind of separates a lot of applicants from other applicants because a lot of people are very qualified. Their resumes are insane. Their LinkedIn is really good. Their GitHub has a lot of projects, but they don't really talk and interact with other professionals. So that's kind of what separates you. And at the end of the day, that's what honestly gets you a lot of opportunities at the end of the day. So, and I think all of us have experience with networking and how it can have a major impact on getting an opportunity. So yeah, in general, you just got to put yourself out there. And I will admit, a lot of times it's very cringe, very awkward. You know, going to the career fairs and walking up to someone, and both of you know what you want. It's just kind of weird because you both know that you want an internship. It's like you kind of have to make a conversation about it somehow and make it seem like it's not about the internship, but it's about the internship. But you just got to kind of get over that hump and just like relieve all your ego, your pride, and just like put yourself out there. And yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. In general, you can do cold calling, which is basically just emailing people using LinkedIn, using in-person resources. I think On talks about it later, but I think he had an experience where he basically like reached out on Twitter. So I'll let On talk about that later. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to just find people. You know, maybe you have a family, maybe you have friends that work at these places, alumni like us, for example. There's a lot of different ways. One of the great ways of getting into these things early, especially as like underclassmen, is outreach programs. So there's a lot of different opportunities like diversity initiatives. There's many different ones like MLT. There's a few other ones that I know about, but I haven't personally used them. But these are great ways to get connected with not only like companies, but also people like-minded people, I suppose. Hackathons are also great. I don't know how many people have done hackathons here, but I hope all of you have tried. Whether or not you actually win at a hackathon, because winning at a hackathon is very hard, but just going there and interacting with the companies there, the booths. Usually all the hackathons at A&M at least have like a career fair portion at the beginning where you can just talk to the companies. I have many different friends that got internships literally from going to a hackathon. Like for example, American Airlines I know is at the hackathons a lot. I know a few friends that got internships through them. Apple was at the Datathon last year, and that's like crazy. You know, Apple is like one of the best companies. So yeah, and then I know someone asked about diversity initiatives. Basically, they're like specifically catered to specific groups like Hispanic groups or African American or South Asian, East Asian. Basically, they're kind of like targeted programs. So, you know, might as well take advantage of it if you fit into one of those groups, you know. Also, externships. This is one that I did. These are like short programs that are not necessarily internships, but they're like basically like feeder programs. So I did one at Jane Street, which is basically a week-long excursion in New York. And it was learning about what they do, their different, you know, industries and stuff. And then that kind of turned into interviews. So yeah, these are great ways just to break in. Attending recruiting events is obviously probably the best way to get recruited, obviously. Career fairs, I already kind of talked about those, and we'll talk about what's coming up soon. Also company events at clubs like ACC, ADSC, ACPC, all these clubs, AWICS, they have companies coming in trying to find people. So you might as well go to them. Even if you're not interested in the company, just go to them and then you'll get a connection basically. And then also professional organizations. These are all very good. I don't think I was personally in a professional organization, but like SEC, for example, is a great one. And yeah, there's a bunch of different ones in engineering and all of A&M. And then yeah, also participating in workshops. This is kind of a niche one, but this is actually how I got my internship at Asana. Basically, I was just looking through WayUp, I think, which is a recruiting site, which we'll talk about later. And I was just signing up for anything and everything, like workshops about interviews, workshops about like data engineering or anything. You'll see a lot of them in like our A&M CS email. Like they have the workshops at the bottom, like Capital One tea time talk or something like that. I don't know what it's called, but these are all different things that you can just get into and talk to industry professionals. And so I did one for Asana. It was like a technical interview workshop series. That was in April of 2022. And then they said if you complete it, you get an interview. So I completed it, got an interview in like June, and then I got an offer by like August for the internship. And then obviously now I'm gonna work there. So you never know what these random events could turn into. So try everything. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is another thing that you should maybe start thinking about, start working on. I saw someone talk about BMOC for interviews. So basically, how do you prepare for an interview? If you've never done one, it might seem daunting. Like, what am I supposed to talk about? Like, do you even know yourself? Like, how do you explain who you are basically in an interview? It's a deep question. But this is one of the best ways, at least, to describe your accomplishments and like what you have done, and that's called the STAR method. Nowadays, this is like there's so many different forms of the STAR method, but essentially you just got to explain 4 things, which is the situation, the task, the action, and then the result. So situation is what was the context of what you were doing. Task is what was the task at hand that you were, the challenges that you're trying to I guess solve. The action is what you did, and then the result is what was the impact. So if you notice, this is also kind of how I talked about structuring your bullet points in your resume. So basically, like thinking of everything that you've ever done professionally and academically in the scope of STAR is kind of like how you can form your resume, how you can talk to professionals, how you can do your interviews. So yeah, this is kind of how in my mind, like we'll talk about this later about how to prepare, but like one of the ways I prepared for some of my interviews was like going through each experience that I've done, like my internships or my projects or hackathons, and explaining what is the situation, task, action, result. So doing STAR for each thing that I've done. That's like a good way to prepare. And then the next step is like being able to talk about it. So maybe talk to like one of your friends, or if you find that embarrassing, talk to like an AI or something like ChatGPT, like make an interviewer or something like that. Use virtual interview websites. So there's a lot of different ways to practice. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
I want to add another thing on this is that I think like storytelling is a really important skill for engineers. And you not only use like an interview, when you tell about your one of the experience you have with this project, or like a time you failed and so on. But even like I guess in my daily work right now, I'm writing a design doc where I basically propose a project, and I literally have to think about, okay, so who are the customer, who I'm talking to, why is there's a need for this, what is the reason, what do we expect to happen, and all of these, right? And it basically like the same basic like storytelling skills. So maybe you can also think it about it that way. And then I guess I can talk about this slide. So about like general advice pre-interview about like, so we usually have like 2 portions for the interview. For the internship, it's technical and behavior. So for technical, usually, I would say in our school, we have this class called CSCE 430, which Dr. Kaiser taught. And it, I think like problem solving strategy. And it basically like prepping you for technical interview. So, you come into class every day, maybe like a day in a week, and then you do like problems, lab, and there's gonna be like solution discussion and all of those. If you don't take in that class, you can also find like resources like LeetCode, so or like some other resources like cracking the code in interview, LeetCode, and so on. About when the time that you do the interview, for me personally, I think about the interview as a collection of signal. So during the interview, you should like verbalizing your thought so that the interviewer can note down, okay, so what is unthinking, right? What is unconsidered pro and cons and so on. And then you should always asking clarifying question. This is to make sure that you don't go down the wrong path, too deep in the wrong path, and then you don't have enough time to switch it back. And then also start with running through some example. This can either like help you to understand the problem more, or also give you some more filler time to think about what you're going to do next for the solution. And then lastly is that you don't always, I guess, it prefer, but always aim to have a working solution before you do it optimal. because a lot of times suboptimal can take a lot of time to implement it, a lot of time to discuss, and you might not get through it by the end of the interview. For me, one of the things that really helpful for me was that when I guess I got stuck in a problem, I always try to speak out about the bottleneck. So for example, I can say, I think I'm stuck here because I think that I was thinking the order doesn't matter, but apparently it does matter. And here's why my algorithm doesn't work. So when you talk about this bottleneck, it actually at the same time also give the interviewer the signal, right? Okay, in this case, I'm able to identify the bottleneck and also consider the trade-off. And then at the same time, you should also open to feedback for the interviewer. A lot of time when I did interviewer usually gonna maybe tell and okay, so let's take a step back, can you tell me more about this step and so on. A lot of time you can take that also a hint, oh, am I going down on the right direction, or I guess clueless or anything like that. And then the last tip is also think about the constraint, and that can also give you some hints about the complexity. So if you have a really large input, right? Usually when you have a large input, algorithm polynomial O n square probably would not work. So a lot of time you should aim for O n log n, which may related to, okay, are we using the heap? Are we using binary search? Are we using some, divide and conquer over here? And then for me, after the interview, if you feel that you don't do well enough, you can ask for additional round. And the reason you can use is that I want to have additional feedback because additional signal, sorry, because I didn't feel I did well in the last round. And this for me worked out a lot. So I used to be in the intern at Snapchat, and Snapchat only gave out 2 technical interview for every intern. I'm the only one that have 3. And the reason because after the second technical interview, I just messaged the recruiter saying about, oh, I don't think I did really well on that round. And I would love, if the interviewer have availability, would love to do another round for additional signal. And then did the same thing for NVIDIA, Apple, and a lot of time it worked out. So it's not really a big ask. The worst thing they say is just no. So that's totally okay. And then one last resources I want to highlight would be the Blast 75 question. I think you can also search the LeetCode 75 question. It will probably be the same list, but it's basically this list of there's a group of people that contribute to this list to have a really cover a lot topic in interview. And to be honest, I don't even finish the Blast 75 list, and I think all of my interview has been going well. So if you finish all of them, that's perfect. For behavior, the first thing you need to do is do your research about the company. So if you come into Asana interview, and you should know what is Asana product are, or maybe Salesforce, right? Don't go into the interview and just oh yeah, Salesforce is a tech company that I would love to work at. That'd be kind of generic. And then you can also think about the company values or special project that going on, or maybe other intern event. So for example, in my case, I think Netflix, we have a really heavy, we literally wrote a book about Netflix culture. And a lot of them is all common to one rule called freedom and responsibility. With basically the company will never tell the employee to, do anything, because they trust that we gonna make the right decision with that responsibility. And for me, I'm not sure about other companies, but at Netflix, when you interview for behavior, if you can highlight this, that's literally a pass. You cannot fail at that moment anymore. That's a pass already. So I think it may be the same for the company too. I'm not sure. And then again, about a personal brand. From your own personal experience and on your resume, you can think about the role that you're applying for and try to form the narrative that support that role. So for example, I want to work in distributed system. So the way that I formed my story was that I have been doing a lot of internship from front end, back end, infra security, and so on. And I feel I try a lot of different area, and I really love to tackle the scaling and the reliability problem the most. And that's why this is the reason that I applied for this position, and so on. And then second thing would just another thing would be interview your interviewers. So at the end of the interview, usually the interviewer gonna give you like 15 minutes for you to ask any question. You shouldn't like stay silent and awkward at that time. Just ask them about their life. What are you what is your team? What do you work on? And all of those. For me, I usually use two questions. Is that I usually ask, okay, so what are the reason that I guess convince you to start at this company in the first place? And what are some motivation that I guess like keep you coming to work or like make you stay here since then? And that coming out to a lot of story about like the work, the challenge, how did they enjoy the company and so on. And yeah, I think that's it. And then
just in this
yeah.
slide is just like an example of like me doing research for like or in preparation for an interview. Like literally look at everything that you can, make sure that you're like not going in blind, because A, that looks so bad on you, but B, like make the most of the opportunities you're given, even if it's not a company that you're like, oh my God, dream company. Like, I don't know, it should, after like you have dove in and done like all of the research, you should at least like be passionate about it in some way, because that can come across in your interview so clearly. So, yeah.
Do I tag this slide? You all?
Yeah,
Okay.
you got it on.
Okay. So about like searching for internship. Usually I guess you can think about like the industry. So for me, I want to work, like tech heavy. So I usually am in for tech company. A lot of other people, you want to work in maybe like climate tech, like also tech company, but like actually solving like climate problems, like capture CO2 on all of those. So think about like what do you want to do first, and then so also thinking about like the I guess like the environment. So usually I act like bigger tech companies, usually like more than 5,000 people or more than 5,000 engineers. A lot of time your role is really constraining the team because like everything is like owned by a team. However, like if you want to experience, like the switching between like across role and like be able to like work on different stuff like in everyday life, you can also think about startup. Usually startup will require you to have like multiple hats and so on. And about a company culture, usually for me, I personally want a company that give me high ownership. So an ability for me to own a project, own a big project, and trust me that I will deliver that, even though that they don't know me yet. And then second would be impact. So, like if I'm able to, I guess like ship login experience to 200 million members of Netflix, that'd be nice, right? When I think about it. And then lastly would just like be about learning opportunities. So I guess like for this one, it depends. Usually you can treat it as kind of like another opportunity for you to try different role. For example, I have been doing like infra for a while or like front end for a while. Now I want to do security. So that's also can count it as learning opportunity. Or you can also like want to like apply for a team or like a company or like opportunity that present you to solve like difficult technical challenge. For example, I think in right now, generative AI is constrained by compute. So a lot of like company like Croc, where they like design their own AI chip. That is also really nice opportunity to learn. And then also about thinking about the role which you apply for. So over here we have like software engineer, software development engineer, or data engineer, or solution engineer. In my experience, software engineer usually you are the one that like working on the tech behind the scene. For data engineer, you are the one that prepare this data to be consumption by anyone in the company. And for solution engineer, usually in the case of you want to work closely with customer about how we going to use the company product to solve this use case. So if I was a solution engineer at Asana, I would be like, okay, how do I going to use Asana to solve the company problem? Solve the customer problem, sorry. And then about time period, we also have a lot of like internship that spread across like the whole year, from like fall, winter, spring, and summer. So like a lot of time, I think a lot of people at Texas A&M, we took like a semester or maybe the whole year off, just like doing internship, just to get more experience if you're into that too. And then about recruitment schedule, a lot of time again, you have to like recruit like maybe a year or like 7 to 8 months but earlier before then get started. And also I want to add another tip would be that, so for example, in the fall, usually the company have fall internship is like Snowflake, Lincoln, Fig, Snowflake, Lincoln, Datadog. And for this company, usually you have to also recruit like from like the July of the previous year, and then you can start like applying for fall of next year too. So that's just like, I guess, like general. And then lastly would be that don't wait until you are ready. The truth is that you will never feel ready. Like the only time you feel ready is that you got the offer. So for me, I think like when I was a freshman, Facebook actually come to our career fair and I got an interview from them. And at that time I was like, oh, I'm a freshman. I haven't even taken any coding class. I would not be prepared for this. So I would just declare the interview. And that's kind of, when I'm looking back, it's kind of silly, right? Because when you think about it, even if you don't pass the interview, you basically get a free mock interview from actually industry interviewers, right? So instead of paying any like other paid service, that's literally like also resources for the future.
Okay, so we saw some questions in the chat like regarding this, so hopefully this slide kind of answers them. But it's about getting in contact with, I don't know, I guess people in companies that you're interested in. And I think that the best avenue to go is LinkedIn, like we said before. You can put specific filters on who you're looking for so that it's like people or like specific alumni from your school. Like that's what I did, for example, for when I had interviews. I would literally use a filter to see people from A&M that were working at the specific company, try to set up a call with them, and then ask them questions about their interview and like life at the company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that way you not only have something to like talk about during the interview, but you're also like prepared for the types of questions that you're going to see. And then On can talk a little bit about his Twitter experience.
Okay, so this is strange, but apparently there's a lot of engineering manager of Apple and Tesla and Netflix on Twitter. And usually, they use the Twitter as a platform to share the technical learnings, or I said a technical blog and so on. So I was like, I just create a new Twitter and I was just scrolling on Twitter, or you call it S nowadays. And I saw like this manager was talking about like their team is working on like Apple framework team, which basically like you're working on Swift to enable all of the Apple capabilities. And I just like literally like cold email. I mean like cold message like, hey, I saw your tweet. I'm Ann, here's my intro, here's my info. Just let you know that I'm really interested in the team position. Please let me know how to contact. And then he got back, and then from there I literally landed the interview to Twitter too. So but so what I guess like the learning was that please utilize any social media platform if you could. Focus on LinkedIn first, and then if you have time, like do others. But like a lot of time, you can also I'm not like anyone hope like Hacker News. It basically kept like this blog base from Y Combinator. And if you this was one of like incident that really famous was like in 2012, Brian Armstrong, which is the current CEO of Coinbase, literally posted the first founding engineer job position on Hacker News. And if you could think about it, right, that's kind of like a billionaire opportunity if you could able to land the interview at that time. So utilize anything. And then Anna, do you want to continue with the rest?
Yeah. So honestly, for me, the number one, like, I don't know, what I owe a lot of my success to is putting myself out there and trying to like do all of the conferences, do all of the externships, all of like the opportunities that were like in some way like related to me or like available to me. I would apply and I would like do my best to like make myself available to go. So I did the externship with Jane Street that Rishu did. I also went to Tapia with On, so there's like a picture of us down there together. And then probably the most important one for me was the Tech Equality Summit that I attended with Salesforce, because that eventually led to me getting a interview for, you know, the internship position, which eventually led to my full-time position. So I don't know, really take advantage of like the opportunities like out there in front of you. A&M has what's it called? Scholarships to go to these conferences. So don't just like read the email and be like, oh, like whatever, like it doesn't matter. Like people get interviewed on the spot. I know On last year at Tapia got interviewed by, oh God, I forget who it was, but he had an on the spot interview. Who was it?
2 Sigma.
2 Sigma, with 2 Sigma. Oh, and at these conferences and stuff, you get invited to like company events. So I got invited to a dinner with 2 Sigma, got like a ton of merch, got contacts with like the company and stuff and they're now in my network, all because I attended this conference and they decided to like reach out to me because my maybe something they saw on LinkedIn like resonated with them. For girls or like women, females, whatever, Grace Hopper is like awesome. I know last year it was in Orlando and girls literally got invited to, I forget what company it was, but they got invited to Disney World for like the closing ceremony thing. Like, and they just got an opportunity to like A, go to Disney World, which is like awesome, but B, like talk to their recruiters and like engineers. It was some fintech company, I forget. And I don't know, I know that AWICS, they don't advertise it, but their officers get like a automatic scholarship to go to Grace Hopper. So motivation to get involved in like officer positions. There's also conferences for like SHEP, and I'm assuming NSBE also, though I can't say that from personal experience. But yeah, super important to like get involved and take advantage of the opportunities that are there. I know last year my like application didn't even go through to like for the Tapia conference, but then I called the engineering department or the CS department and I was like, hey, like if anybody drops out, like can I go? And then they let me go. So honestly, like always ask, always like follow up and like look to see like what opportunities are out there for you, because all like these companies have so much out there for everyone, and like it's just a matter of you like clicking the button and applying, because sometimes that's really all it takes, like uploading your resume and applying. And it can lead to like at the very minimum like a cool experience, and at the maximum like literally a full-time offer. And I'm like a testament to that. So yeah, super important. Like I cannot stress this enough, and like please go to those links that we have included because they have like all of those listed. And you have to be very careful about like the recruitment for like externships and like conferences and stuff, because it is like pretty, like the deadlines and stuff are pretty strict, but if you think about it in advance, then you can definitely take advantage of them.
Thank you. I also want to add over here is that we also mentioned about Kleiner Perkins Fellowship, AVC Fellowship on New York Schoolers. So this fellowship are actually run by a venture capital firm, which basically, you know, give you internship opportunity at the startup in the portfolio. So for example, for New York Schooler, okay, maybe everyone here probably use ChatGPT, right? The company that created is OpenAI, and Neo actually invested in OpenAI last year. So I think I know a few individuals that like got into Neo Schooler and now currently intern in OpenAI right now. By the time we're talking, and then I think what else? Oh, and then also I think one of the most major advantage from our school is that we have so many alumni. So everywhere you go, you're gonna miss some. And the reason that I landed the 2 Sigma interview last year at Tapia was that I saw Carolyn, which is also one of the TA for Dr. Tyagi for 312 when I took the class. And she was like, oh yeah, like let me try to help you. And then eventually that's how I landed the interview on the spot. So But yeah, that's
Oh wait, and I have one more thing to add, which is when I got interviewed for Salesforce, we were not paired up like in any specific way, but I got super lucky and my interviewer was an Aggie. So use that Aggie network to your advantage. If I had not looked on LinkedIn before the interview and like seen that he had it on his profile, I never would have known. And that would have been like a conversation like an untouched conversation topic that like probably did help me in some way. Aggies love Aggies.
Oh, and I think that this slide is just basically a summary of one of the previous slide about like be yourself, be honest about what you want to tell. Please don't fake your experience on resume. Like people, I think people knew, you know, like if after like you working in this industry for so long, you can like actually knew what is going on. And then also a lot of time, if you have time, I would say also like don't reuse the exact same resume for every application. Look at like the job description, specific skill and so on. And yeah, do you want to talk more about this? Yusha?
Yeah, this is basically a summary of everything we've talked about. There's a few things that I've seen in the chat that I wanted to address too. Like, one thing is like the idea of embellishing what you've done. So there's a trade-off, obviously, with the way you present yourself is the way that they expect you to be. So obviously, if you want to embellish a little bit, say like, you know, let's say you did a project on you know, React or something. If you want, you can market yourself as knowing React, which is valid since you did a project. But just be ready for them to quiz you on it, ask you as many questions as they want. Basically, be ready to appear as the person that you are portraying yourself as in your resume. Another thing is, I guess like what happens now with generative AI. You know, it's kind of changed the software engineering industry in a lot of ways. So you know, depending on what you want to do, Gen AI may have an impact and may not. You know, for example, I feel like on a lot of lower level programming areas, it doesn't have as much impact. Whereas, you know, in full stack development, when you're developing like websites and UIs, it makes that a lot easier. So I think the key in this new era is basically emphasize the things that you can't do with AI. You know, if you're a good designer, emphasizing that you know how to design. If you are really good at like data optimization or things that are specific in a specific domain, for example, like if you have specific domain knowledge about cricket data or sports analytics, emphasize those things more than general topics. Basically, the game is the same as always, is show how you're unique and different from everyone else. Another key thing on this website, which I see some people are talking about in chat, is the apply early and apply often. I remember when during COVID, they said like test early, test often. Basically, adapt that to applications. Like apply to everything, apply early. If you see something that opens up, just apply to it. Because there's one thing on to like the worst thing that is ever going to happen with any of these applications is that you get a no. That's the absolute worst thing that could happen. So apply to things. Keep track of your applications if you can, because maybe you apply to something and then they don't follow back for a few months. You can email them back. There's actually a GitHub, or actually, this next point that we have is like where to look and apply. There's a lot of different resources that you can use. Obviously going to the company's websites is probably the best way. Like just go to Amazon's website, go to Amazon Careers, and then see what they have available. There's a lot of different other websites. Handshake is a good one. LinkedIn Jobs is probably the most popular one. Ripple Match, Way Up is the thing that I mentioned earlier. Hire Aggies is probably actually one of the best ones, especially, you know, taking advantage of the Aggie network is very powerful. Aggies love Aggies, like Anna said, so might as well take advantage of the fact that you're an Aggie, you know? And another thing with LinkedIn that I wanted to mention is that the filtering is like one of the most powerful parts of LinkedIn. It's actually so, if you know how to use it, you can do so much with it. Like, for example, for me, let's say I know someone that interns at Apple, right? What I could do is filter for second level connections that go to A&M and see all the people that they know that work at Apple that are full-time people. And maybe I can talk to them and get like more of a full-time perspective if that's what I'm interested in. So I would recommend looking up like LinkedIn filter tutorials and stuff, or it's actually very easy too. So use that as much as you can as well. I guess let's go to the next slide. I think we have time for this. Or do we want to leave like a few minutes just purely for questions, Dr. Tiagi?
I think you can go to the next one. Yeah, spend some time. We'll look at any questions that need answering. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll keep answering everyone else in the chat as you're going. But this is a small example of how you can tailor your resume, like we said in the slides. Obviously, having a base resume is very important, especially if you want to like spam apply to things. Like just have a resume that you can give to anyone, but especially for things that you're really excited about or maybe are a little bit more competitive, look through the application and look at key things that you can optimize on. For example, for Figma, this application that I saw last year, they mentioned cross-functional teams. So I mentioned that all over. I think I used the word cross-functional in my Dell section. Building models to understand user behavior and predict growth. You'll notice that those like action verbs are very important. So at the beginning of each of the bullet points that I have, I use an action verb like implemented, aggregated, designed. So matching these action verbs are very powerful. Recommendations is something that I mentioned as well. There's another box that I see is the dashboard and communicating results to stakeholders. These are all terms that like if you get into an internship, you hear these so often, which is why it's so important, because like it's important to understand how people in the company interact with each other, like who are you working for, how does this impact this specific person. So mentioned all of these little things. And then the easiest ways to trigger these keywords is the skills. So you can see in this one, they mentioned SQL, R, Python, statistics, research. So I just, mention these in as many places as I can. In the technical skills, in the project section, just mention it all over the place. And then, whether it's a real person that looks at your resume or like an AI or some automated system, they'll pick up on what you have based on the application. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Basically we're just going to kind of wrap up what we've talked about. After I go through these slides, I'll let Anna and An also add in anything that they want to add in. But essentially your next steps going forward is, first of all, is make your resume. Make it good. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, because at the end of the day, it's never going to be perfect. You'll always keep building on the resume, but have something that you're proud of, that you can talk about, and it has substance. And then go to career fairs. So there's a few different ones that always happen: SEC, IAP, the industry partners, engineering honors if you're part of that. There's CS specific ones. Also update your LinkedIn, create a LinkedIn. I'm guessing most people nowadays have a LinkedIn, but add everything: volunteer experience, achievement, scholarships. When you're graduating, make a bio. Like there's a lot of simple things that you can do even if you don't have actual experience. Look at like companies and applications that are open. This is probably one of the most powerful GitHubs out there. Basically, they update it every time there's a new internship that opens. I guess we have summer 2024. So I think they update the link. So you can just look at the same one, and it's probably for summer 2025. Levels FYI is also a good one. And then, in general, like it's not like everything that happens for your application happens right now in August, September. It's continuous. Like at all times, whenever you go to club meetings, talk to people, ask for advice, make connections. And we talk about like connections and networking, but like just become friends with these people. Like you'll find that there's people with like so many different experiences that you might also just find out something new about them. So let's go to the next slide. This is a glossary. I'm not going to go through these, but I know a lot of people were asking about some of these terms like OA and DSA and stuff like that. So this is a general starter that you can use. Next slide, I think also contains some resources that we talked about a little bit, in addition to everything else that is available. Next slide after that, these are a bunch of different companies that if you just need a list of companies to research, here you go. This is a bunch of random companies across the computer science space. So obviously FANG, there's a lot of these companies in the second section that are kind of like adjacent to FANG or support FANG. So for example, like Asana is a customer, or a lot of the customers for Asana are like Facebook, Amazon. So same with all these other ones, Salesforce and Netflix are the same. Next, yeah, so this is the SEC career fair that's actually about to happen next week. This is probably one of the best ones, especially like a lot of us, we focus on the FANGs and the tech companies, but there's a lot of companies that have tech opportunities that are not tech companies, like construction, aerospace, finance, fintech. A lot of these companies will go to this SEC career fair. So if you're able to go, I think there's a shuttle to get to the Legends Event Center if you don't have a ride there. Try to go. That last day is actually virtual, so go right there, go right now and sign up for slots. I think you can sign up right now because they fill up quick. So yeah, sign up for everything. Next slide, we have the EH Career Fair, which is also happening like, I guess, this end of this week / next week. If you're in honors, take advantage of this. This is even more targeted than SEC. So get contacts, get emails, spread your resume. And yeah, I think that's it. Next slide, we have some FAQs. But yeah, that was pretty much the presentation. Did you guys want to add anything, Anna, on the closing remarks?
I think we already cover a lot of stuff. So I guess if anyone want to email and ask the question, please feel free to. We're not gonna eat you or anything. So
Oh, and feel free to connect with all of us on LinkedIn. Maybe, or like, oh, I think a useful tip is like take advantage of the sending a little message with your connection, because like recently I've been getting a ton, and if I don't know you and I don't see a message, then I might not accept. So yeah, I feel like that's a good tip, is to utilize a little message thing.